What plays in your head when you finally manage to quiet it down? I think we all have some melody stuck in that part of our brain that tries to shut everything else out. Mine goes like this. If you guess the song, it means you've also fallen under one of Juan Gabriel's most powerful spells, a spell of collective madness. And if you don't recognize the melody, I'm honored to be the Mexican who gets to introduce you to this incredible piece of art. A piece of art that will make you cry and dance and has an amazing story to tell you. Hasta que te conocí. That's the title of the song that lives rent-free in my mind. It drives me crazy. In the best possible way. Specifically, the live version with the Orquesta Sinfónica Nacional, el Coro del Palacio de Bellas Artes, and the Mariachi Arriba Juárez. ¡Sí, señor! A historic event that took place in Mexico City in 1990. Back when the Soviet Union still existed, and Freddie Mercury was still alive. Yo era muy feliz. A Catholic kid moved by the Pope's visit to Mexico. Yo vivía muy bien, raised in a typical Latin American family, where a man had to cross himself to show his faith and attack gay people to prove his manhood. Porque a mí desde pequeño, eso me enseñó mi tío Jesús. Throughout his life, mi tío Jesús insulted every gay person he saw pass by as a joke, with special cruelty when my cousins and I were around, always finishing with some joto, puto, or some homophobic bullshit. The worst thing was how he'd look at us, waiting for us to laugh and pile on too. Most of my cousins went along with it, but I was left puzzled, with a Scooby-Doo expression. Not so much because of my uncle's homophobia, that word didn't even exist in my 10-year-old head, but because of the stark contrast it created with his passion for Juanga. He was probably the first adult I saw become a reckless drunk, and also the first human being I saw turn into algo hermoso, algo divino, lleno de felicidad. My uncle passed his crude behavior thanks to a concert they were showing on TV. Juan Gabriel desde el Palacio de Bellas Artes. Mi tío Jesús went wild. He acted like he was El Divo de Juárez and imitated him with devotion. He repeated every gesture, every movement, except the voice. Because let's be honest, nobody ever sang like that night at the palace again, not even Juanga himself. But not all of my drunk uncle's imitation was mockery. There was a genuine tribute to the artist. He recognized him as an extraordinary and beautiful human being. That was something I shared with my uncle, almost by instinct. Mi tío Jesús doing his Juanga routine is still one of my most inspiring childhood memories. It's what gets me dancing when I'm feeling too shy. But his homophobic behavior, that's among the most shameful stuff I've ever witnessed. In case you haven't noticed yet, I'm a straight white chilango who only lacks still being Catholic to complete the stereotype. That's why I haven't let anyone else speak so far in this podcast. But I'll introduce you to the real protagonist shortly. This is the story of how one of the greatest concerts of all time came to be. How they planned the performance of a brown popular artist in a white conservative palace. A crazy idea that seemed impossible and will never have enough praise to describe it. It doesn't matter if you know who Juanga is or have heard about his Bellas Artes shows. Trust me, it really doesn't. The concert at the Palace was an event full of characters and situations that will leave you wondering. Sometimes about the event, sometimes about yourself. My name is Andrés Vargas, and on behalf of a great production team, I welcome you to a Sonoro original podcast, No Me Provoquen, Breaking the Palace. Chapter 1, Te pareces tanto a mí, Juanga's wild hit. The first time Juanga set foot in Bellas Artes, there was massive controversy. Why? Because people said that stage was reserved only for certain artistic expressions, very different from those of his kind. I think Juan Gabriel was an artist in a class of his own, like John Lennon wrote. No one I think is in my tree. Like Björk, Prince, or Bowie. You can't put them in a box and they're very provocative. They're magicians with a cloak of mystery that always leaves you wanting to know more. And perhaps that's what makes their music feel so enchanting. Like it has its own soul, timeless and captivating. This podcast is not a documentary about Juan Gabriel's life. I'm fine with almost everything Wikipedia says. I'm tired of being the kind of fan who always wants to know more to really understand the artist's transcendence. I've accepted that it's not healthy to idolize artists. You just have to fall deeply in love with their work. Like the crazy love so many of us feel for Hasta que te conocí en Bellas Artes. Don't get me wrong. I like most of his stuff that I've heard, but I don't plan to go on an expedition through his 40-plus albums or 1,800 songs. Besides, I think Juanga handled mystery as part of his charm, along with his wit. What I'm trying to say is, don't open another search tab. Here's a summary of Juanga you won't find on Wikipedia and no AI could generate. Juanga was the 10th child of 2 Mexican farm workers who came into this cruel world only to witness the death of 8 of his 10 siblings, 3 of them named Rafael, be abandoned by his parents and thrown into prison on death charges at age 20. But he also wrote his first song at 13. He sold 150 million records, and every 40 seconds, somewhere in the world, one of his songs is playing. Juan Gabriel may be many things, but my favorite thing about Juanga is that he is a symbol of art's triumph over sadness and cruelty, as he embodied during 4 concerts in May of 1990, especially during the performance of Hasta que te conocí. It's a 9-minute, 22-second spell that takes us from the abyss of heartbreak to the glory of the most joyful dance ever summoned in a palace. It's a performance with over 700 million views on YouTube. That means Hasta que te conocí has more views than 2 of the most iconic concerts in history, Queen at Live Aid, or all the videos of Michael Jackson's first moonwalk combined. It was the highest point in Juan Gabriel's career, and the sexiest moment in Bellas Artes history. But the idea for the show didn't come from a request by El Divo de Juárez, and the palace certainly didn't roll out the red carpet for him. The wild idea came from a woman named María Esther Pozo.
How did I get Juan Gabriel to Bellas Artes? It's quite the telenovela.
Every single of the millions of people moved by Hasta que te conocí en Bellas Artes owes their ticket to María.
I was director of communications and public relations at Bellas Artes. I got there because I used to produce a cultural TV show at Televisa called Para Gente Grande. And there I met the president of the Festival Cervantino, who, when he was named general director of Bellas Artes, offered me this position.
Most TV producers wouldn't have traded their career and Televisa salary for cultural promotion in government.
Es una tarea titánica.
It's a titanic task to bring audiences to music, dance, theater, architecture, literature, opera.
But María chose to be close to the fine arts and their harsh reality.
Yo me sentía
Every time I went to big companies asking for support to publish an art book, I always felt like I was at the back of the line with all the needy people, because there were also kids with cancer, people with cerebral palsy, etc. And there we were with culture, begging, extending our hand, asking for money.
The Mexican government always claims que no tiene dinero ni nada que dar when it comes to funding some of the most vital activities for human well-being, like medical services or art. Most bureaucrats will accept that there are other priorities on the list. But Maria truly wanted to make a difference from her new position, especially in the toughest missions.
La Sinfónica, para mí siempre...
The symphony was always present for me. That was precisely our concern, how to get money to buy instruments for the orchestra. That was hard to obtain. We always turned to private companies for support. But for example, it was easier when you told them their money was to make a catalog for an exhibition, so they would see an art book with their logo. But it wasn't easy to get money to buy instruments because there they couldn't see it.
Behind the exhibitions and concerts that captivate all visitors to the Palacio de Bellas Artes, there's a huge effort by people who are paid and recognized much less than they really deserve. Fortunately, Maria had good guidance to navigate the cold waters of public funding and culture.
Yo como directora de difusión...
I, as director of fine arts promotion, I replaced Adriana Salinas de Gortari in that position, and we became friends in the transition process.
Adriana Salinas de Gortari was the president of Mexico's sister. But don't think that María Esther was some niña fresa or upper-class snuff. Maria also rolled with la banda.
Un jueves cualquiera...
My subdirector, Paulina Cantera, told me, "Hey, Guarita, we're going to celebrate everyone's birthdays in the department by going to a palenque in Texcoco to see Juan Gabriel, and we'd like you to come with us."
Well, maybe she was a little bit niña fresa.
Yo no me las quiero dar de...
I don't want to act all cultured, but I had never seen Juan Gabriel and had never been to a palenque.
¡Cierren las puertas, señores!
In the first act of a palenque, two roosters face off in the center of a small arena with blades tied to their legs to make them deadlier, and sometimes to splash blood on the audience betting on one of these poor dinosaur descendants.
Simplemente no es...
It wasn't within my interests or activities, but I felt it was a commitment to the people I worked with.
Back to the palenque, the second act is musical, where the crowd spends the rest of the evening drinking and singing to celebrate their wins or drown their losses, whether from cockfights or heartbreaks.
Te pareces tanto a mí.
It takes a very special artist to understand and entertain people who live in that contrast between pain and celebration.
Que no puedes engañarme.
A poet you can identify with.
Yo nunca he visto algo igual.
Anything like it, I hadn't seen it before, and I haven't seen it since. It wasn't like anything else, although it did have a part of José Alfredo Jiménez, which was telling all of us what we needed to hear. He's an artist of the sentimental education of Mexicans. Juan Gabriel's phenomenon, not just in palenques, anywhere he performed, was anthropological. Men, women, dogs, children, all went wild. Wild.
As crazy as mi tío Jesús.
Los hombres...
Men would let loose. They freed themselves from the Mexican machismo that was way more intense back then. All men could shout compliments at Juan Gabriel without any shame.
Y no digo que fueran gay.
And I'm not saying they were gay at all. I'm simply saying it was a generalized liberation phenomenon.
This liberation phenomena that Maria describes is one of the most beautiful aspects of Juanga's magic. To postpone homophobia. As the great Mexican thinker Carlos Monsiváis used to say, Juanga captivated an intellectual just the same as a non-intellectual?
¿Qué tenía Juan Gabriel?
What did Juan Gabriel have that achieved that collective madness? At that moment, I said it was because of the amount of alcohol and the hot atmosphere of the palenque.
Por los Don Pedro.
Because of all the Don Pedro con Coca-Cola flowing around sin hielo. But later I realized that no, that's just how Juan Gabriel was. I went crazy too. Of course, with my fair share of Don Pedro's con Coke, no ice.
Juanga wasn't auditioning for a shot at Bellas Artes. He had no idea that palace staff were scattered throughout the crowd. For him, that night was probably just another show. But he poured out all the love and energy he brought to every performance.
El show de Juan Gabriel en el...
Juan Gabriel's show in the Palenque was 4 hours non-stop. And for those 4 hours, people were going crazy, and he really knew how to work a crowd.
From Maria's perspective, probably a little tipsy from the magic of it all, what became clear that night is something many of us now take as a fact. Juan Gabriel was born to sing at Bellas Artes. And thanks to her position at the Institute, she could suggest... In fact, she could organize the concert at the palace. And so began the dream of Juan Gabriel with the Orquesta Sinfónica Nacional at the Palacio de Bellas Artes.
Desde el minuto uno.
My idea was always with the orchestra. Concerts featuring pop musicians partnered with symphonic orchestras had already taken place in other countries. It was a novel model in Mexico, but not unheard of. I always envisioned it with the orchestra. That was the whole point, right? Because the National Symphony Orchestra's home is the Palacio de Bellas Artes.
We can all enjoy that beautiful dream today. But someone had to make it happen. And to do it, Maria started by facing a harsh reality.
Entonces, a la mañana.
So the next morning, hungover, as you can imagine.
We've all been there with a brutal hangover. And we've all had that super serious boss. Maria's boss was Víctor Sandoval.
Un poeta.
A very conservative poet.
No en el...
Not conservative as the word is used today, but in terms of the purity of culture and art.
Purity? Conservative?
Y
I dared to tell him, Victor, yesterday we went to the Palenque. I saw Juan Gabriel, and it occurred to me that we could bring him to Bellas Artes and do a great show with the orchestra.
bueno, se imagina.
Well, you can imagine his reaction was, no, you're not hungover, your brain cells died. No, forget it, under no circumstances.
What kind of purity was this poet trying to preserve at the palace? What could possibly be contaminated by a popular artist? Juanga wasn't begging for a chance at Bellas Artes. He was already an artist with an impressive catalog, 2 decades of work, and sold-out shows throughout the continent. But according to Maria's boss, none of that was enough merit to earn him a spot on Mexico's most prestigious stage. The poet dreamed of keeping the White Palace pure, untouched by the Palenque's raw energy. But Maria's dream was more powerful.
Soy muy necia.
I'm really stubborn. And I was truly convinced that we had to give an opportunity to such a strange artist, so uniquely different from anything else.
I find so many parallels between Maria's stubbornness and my obsession with Juanga in Bellas Artes. We were both completely captivated by his talent, and we both got frustrated by the main insistence that refused to give Juanga the respect he deserved. She had to deal with her boss, I had to deal with mi tío Jesús. Fortunately, Maria's stubbornness won out, and Juanga's concert at the Palacio is now a reality that keeps gathering fans, millions of views, and praise worldwide. This concert is, without a doubt, one of the most celebrated pieces of Mexican art. And the story of how it happened is wrapped up in some of the forces that define us as Mexicans, and also makes us squirm a little. Politics, money, power. I'll tell you how Maria managed to convince the right people so that a show that seemed completely impossible became a government priority.